How's it going, everyone? Kevin here with Roll On Gaming, and we are back to talk about more Star Wars Unlimited, and we have got a lot to talk about. But before we jump in, I have to introduce my co-host and brother, Corwin. Corwin, it's been pretty wild in Star Wars Unlimited. How we feeling?
Feeling good. I mean, you don't have to introduce me, but I appreciate that you did. I don't know if you're contractually obligated, but appreciate it nonetheless.
It would probably help to let the viewers know that we have a prime champion in our midst, even a prime champion that is having major camera issues, and just it is what it is. So we're going to have a lot to discuss here, and that just means more time looking at me and not at you if people can't look at your camera. So it's fine. We're just gonna roll with it. That's just how we do it here on Roll On Gaming. That's what we
I don't
do.
know what's going on today, man, but we'll try to get through.
Technology sucks, but Star Wars Unlimited is great. So we got to talk a little bit about Shadows of the Galaxy at some point, because it's crazy that we're a month into the Spark of Rebellion meta and we're getting Shadows cards sort of slowly filtering in to the atmosphere. Now, I like that they're not doing the full spoiler blitz, but where are you at with Shadows cards already being seen when we haven't even hit Store Showdown season yet?
Yeah, I'm not ready for a new set yet, but I mean, th- this is the thing about having three sets a year. You're bound to have early spoilers in the middle of these other sets, and this is a set that's presenting unique timing just because it's the first one. Store showdowns are more delayed this time around than they are coming in in the future. So yeah, I mean, it's a little bit a little bit much for me, but I definitely feel like we're gonna be we're gonna be dealing with this regularly, as long as there are new sets to talk about. So I gotta just I got to get through it. But yeah, it's exciting that we've got more product on the way for a new set soon.
Yeah, definitely prefer the three set cadence to the four set cadence. So I feel like knowing where we'd be if we had four sets a year, I feel like the full court press would be even greater. So I'm happy to see that we're sort of easing our way into it, while still leaving plenty to explore with Spark of Rebellion, and explore we shall. But the other reason that I think there's a lot of intrigue around Shadows of the Galaxy, and I want to hit on this at the beginning because let's get it sort of out of the way. Is there's going to be it's going to be a very unique set release, because it's not set one, but also because of the product issues surrounding set one right now. Now, I have to give credit where credit is due. FFG has done what they've been doing throughout the lifespan of Star Wars Unlimited. They attacked this head on. They put out a press release when product was starting to dry up, and then they went out this past week and did an unannounced, sort of potentially pre-recorded live stream where Jim Cartwright came out and sort of addressed the supply issues. And what I found the most interesting out of all of that is that they printed more Spark of Rebellion, just set one, than they had printed the entire first year of Star Wars Destiny product, and we still blew through it in a month. In a month. So, what does that say about the product? I guess atmosphere that we're working with Star Wars Limited, because I don't think anybody would look at that and say, well, FFG underprinted, right? So, like, where do you land on how that dynamic has played out?
Well, it's obviously unfortunate that folks who want product are without it at the moment, and there's a lot of people still trying to get in. Some of the wave seems to be from people coming in from other card games. And they've just had a really good experience with Unlimited, and now they're jumping over. And so the initial demand has been huge. I think if you're FFG, you have to be super pleased with that. I can appreciate the balance that has to be struck between just printing enough to make sure you meet the demand that you expect initially, but then also not overprinting to where you're just left with a bunch of surplus if things don't go as you plan. So, it's not great that folks can't get packs and can't get boosters, boxes, and things. But at the same time, we've got a great community. I think cards are being shared, cards are being lent around, cards are finding their way into people's hands regardless, and so that's what I'm hanging my hat on, at least until we get to set two.
Yeah, and then when set two drops, we're not going to get a reprint of set one potentially until the holidays. So set two is really going to have its own benchmark as to, okay, how does this interact with a limited supply of set one? How does it interact as a standalone product? That's a point that was made by one of the folks on the Golden Dice podcast, so I want to shout them out for bringing that to the forefront. But yeah, Shadows of the Galaxy is going to be the the first time some people can get their hands on a lot of product. Now they did say they upped the print run. They were able to do that with set two. So hopefully, we won't see this mad rush of people buying out stores and people continuing to not get any. But it'll be interesting to see how Shadows of the Galaxy is distributed and how much people can get their hands on, because at its core, like, we've been having so much fun with this game. So I think that people are starting to jump on the bandwagon a little bit and realize, hey, this game's really good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. And much has been said about what this is doing to the singles market. I don't think we need to get into that, but it's definitely good for the health of the game to have have more product available so that we can kind of control some of this. And I think there are learnings to be had from this first wave, this first set and release, and so I expect that we'll see improvement as we get into set two. But in the meantime, yeah, I mean, I've been just having a ton of fun jamming games, getting a lot of games in lately, and repping some pretty fun decks. So
Yeah,
it's
so
been great to get
let's
stuff on the table.
let's talk about that. So what have you been playing in Spark of Rebellion when you're going to weekly play nights, when you're going to locals? Like, what have you been having the most fun playing?
Well, lately I've been really having a lot of fun with Luke. Um, Luke Green specifically is a deck that has really kind of grabbed me
Hmm.
in recent weeks, and so I've been playing a lot of that. And it's definitely a deck that I've really come to love and appreciate. It fits my playstyle really well, and it's got a lot of cool things you can do, and characters that are just a lot of fun to play. So Luke is getting a lot of my time right now, and of course, red hero green stuff. That hasn't changed since the beginning, but more specifically lately, it's been a lot of Luke for me.
What drew you to the Luke deck? Because that was one that, up until this past weekend, was sort of off the radar a little bit. He wasn't getting as much shine as Vader was from a perspective of the starter set leaders. Like, why Luke?
I've always been drawn to Luke, even from the beginning. I mean, I going back to my Destiny days, as an R2P2 player, shields and heals were always my thing. So the fact that Luke is able to give shields to units has always been interesting to me, but um, just kind of like seeing the shell and seeing how some of the deck works, and then actually just getting it on the table, really sold me on it. It's one thing to see it on paper and see how effective it could potentially be. It's another thing to actually get the cards in your hands, play, and get a feel for how the deck is supposed to run. And the feel is what has really drawn me to it, because I sit down and I get the cards and I'm like, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to be doing in this game.
Shields and heals. That's a scary prospect for some decks. I guess it sort of depends on what your deck's trying to do. If your deck deals damage or is designed to go into some units, then having shields on your units is pretty scary proposition. Now, if your deck is designed to just defeat things without having to worry about shields, then that's another matter. But we'll get into a little bit of how that's shaping out in just a bit here, because I want to talk about what I've been playing, which is the direct opposite of what you've been playing, and that's Vader, right? So it is amazing to me as I sit here and we look at what you and I are playing. We've got all these cool leaders that you can get in packs and showcases and whatnot, but at the heart of it, you and I are playing two-player starter leaders, which is crazy to me. I've been playing a
No,
ton.
they're iconic, man. It's like Luke and Vader. How can you go
It's
wrong?
true. It's true. I've been playing a ton of Vader. I've been getting some really fun reps in the Saga webcam league. Shout out Space Arena Ground Arena podcast. Space Arena, yeah, Saga. Yep, that sounds right. For putting on the webcam league for Sparkle Rebellion. If you aren't familiar with what it is, go to the Saga Discord. Check them out. They'll be doing another one when Set 2 drops. It's been a lot of fun. I've been playing a lot of Vader into that ever since getting my butt kicked by a Vader in round one for the world to see. That was great. Shout out Loopy from Late Night Gaming for beating the brakes off of me. But I also, I have to stick with my guys. So Vader's one, and then I've been playing a lot of Grand Admiral Thrawn, as you saw on our channel, and as I've sort of been advertising. I love Thrawn, and it helps that you and the rest of the Roll On family hooked it up with the showcase, which was very exciting.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
looks awesome on the table, and I've just really enjoyed what Thrawn can do. It's a little bit of a brain headache every now and then. In some games he just doesn't have the horses, but I think there's a world in which the meta is shaping up to where Thrawn can flourish a little bit, and I guess we'll see. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what's going on out there, right? So the big bad this whole time has been Boba Green. Would you say at this point that the best deck in the format is still Bobo with Energy Conversion Lab?
I would. I think Boba is the deck that everyone is trying to beat right now, and I also think it's the deck that everyone is trying to make better right now.
Mm-hmm.
So you're on one side or the other, um, and either way, it's definitely shaping the meta. So I would say Boba Green is, and we saw it this weekend in Orlando. Like Boba Green had a very good showing, even though it didn't take down the tournament. It was very well represented, and not only in Swiss but in the top cut too. So yeah, I think you have to look at Boba Green right now as the deck to beat.
Yeah, let's talk about the Orlando $5,000 tournament, right? Because that's sort of going to be the benchmark going forward until somebody matches that or tops that. I do think we're going to get a lot of tournaments in a couple weeks for May 4th. But right
Mhm.
now, the Orlando 5K is sort of where all eyes are turned to at this point. And the Orlando 5K got 143 players. So they played 8 rounds. Of those 143 players, 37 people were on Boba Fett. Don't know if all of them were Boba Green, but that's a pretty healthy slice of the pie. Um, and then they cut to top 16, and in the top 16, there were 4 Boba Fetts, so a full quarter of the top cut were Boba Fetts. They were all Boba Green. Uh, what else was represented in the top cut? There were 4 Sabines, uh, most of them green, but there was also a yellow one on Chopper base, which I found interesting.
Mhm.
There were 3 Vaders. 2 of them were blue Vaders, and one of them was a green Vader, but not ECL. It was on Command Center, which was good. There was a Palpatine that was with blue. There was a Krennic that was with green. There was a Luke that was with green. So shout out Luke for making the top 4, which
Yeah,
was
it's top
exciting.
four.
Yeah. There was a Leia who was on Kestro City, so not Tarkin Town. And then rounding out the top 16, there was a Han deck, Han Solo on Tarkin Town. So what are those results? What stands out to you from those results?
Well, I think going back to Boba, the fact that Boba, proportionately made the top cut relative to how it was represented in the field. So, roughly 25% of the field, 25% of the top cut makes sense. Um, Still points to a strong showing for me. Um, Vader, 3 Vaders stands out for sure. Kevin, you should be pretty happy to see that. But the two of those being blue, wondering. I mean, obviously one of those blue Vaders won it, so wondering if that's a deck that we're going to start to see a lot more of. Certainly, bringing the hard control uh, f- um, play style to the forefront here, which if you ask me is a little bit scary, but nevertheless, it's something, it's a thing you can do. So as a Vader player, how are you feeling about that, about those results?
Well, yeah, and shout out to the Blue Vader player who won it. I'm probably gonna butcher the pronunciation of their first name, so I'm not gonna try. But you know who you are. Major congratulations. Taking down the Luke player in the top four, and then taking down Boba Fett in the championship. I watched most of the top four, the two Vader matches in the top four, and then the championship, and it was very interesting, right? So the winning Vader list is nothing like my Vader list. And then granted,
Mhm.
I'm not running blue, but the winning Vader list had 20 units, 20,
Yep.
and that's less than some people's ground units in a deck, including me currently. 20 units, three upgrades, 27 events. And then they had a sideboard that didn't have any units in it either. So, it does speak to sort of the ability to hard control until the end game. And I do think Vader is uniquely positioned in that way because when you pair Vader with Villain Blue, you don't necessarily have to deploy him right away. And I think I saw this a couple times while watching the stream. The Vader player was very smart in the sense that they saved Vader for when they needed to get off a super laser blast. Because a lot of times when you are playing super laser blast, you're being overwhelmed by your opponent's units. And you've got to get it off or else you're going to die, right? Your base is going to just succumb to that amount of damage. But more often than not, that's your whole round. But if you haven't deployed Vader yet, you have something that can reliably take out or at least put dents into whatever your opponent plays after the super laser blast. And survive doing so. He's got 8 health. He's got 5 power, and then does the extra 2 on attack. I really do like that dynamic of the Vader Blue, but my goodness, I'm sitting here thinking and like not having ramp for Vader is a scary proposition because you got to make sure that you're surviving to the late rounds.
Well, that's why you're not playing a lot of units,
Yep.
just to be able to just focus on removing what you can. I was curious about that deck and how it fared against Sabine. I think it faced one Sabine in the top cut, which was the Sabine Yellow you mentioned,
Mm.
and it got there, obviously. So, I mean, Sabine has to be its toughest matchup. But yeah, I mean, the timing of the Vader deploy, and then Vader himself being, of these control leaders that we've seen emerge, Vader is easily the strongest one.
Mm.
Like he's stronger than Iden, he's stronger than Krennic. He's You could argue he's stronger than Palpatine in some respects.
Mm.
So that definitely is a lot for your opponent to deal with after you've super laser blasted. So I mean, I get the concept, and obviously it was run very well. Um, but I wonder if it's going to open up the doors for more of these sort of like heavy removal, lots of events type of control decks to start taking over the meta.
Yeah, I mean, because you've got so many different iterations of those, right? You've got the Vader, you've got the Krennics, you've got the Idens, you've got the Palpatines. They're all essentially doing the same thing. It's just the flavor in which you're doing it is different. And Iden's an interesting point you bring up, and I know you were surprised by this, so I want to get your thoughts on it. 15 Idens in that tournament, none of them made the top 16.
I can't believe that, man. Like how is that even possible? That deck to me is very very strong. Iden
Mm-hmm.
Green. Um, Not as much of a fan of the Iden Red list that are essentially trying to do what Vader's doing, but Iden Green in particular, some of the strongest cards in the entire set are in there. Like it's a conglomeration of major power, and yeah, for it not to make any top cut is kind of wild to me.
Yeah, I do think though. I think that we really saw. If you're talking about the strongest cards in the set, I think we saw this weekend Avenger cement itself into the conversation as one of the best cards in the set, bar none. Like I
I
think.
would argue, I agree with that, but I would also argue Vigilance is starting to really rear its ugly head.
Mhm.
Um, the fact that it's now basically a three of staple in all of these control decks out of aspect is just bananas.
That is pretty wild. The fact that it's good enough to pay 6 for and still get so much value. And it's, I mean, and people are scooping them up like hotcakes right now. So if you need a vigilance, you may have missed the boat. But
Good luck with that.
yeah, gosh, I really do wish I had pulled the trigger on a. There was a hyperspace vigilance that was the last one I needed for my master set of vigilances, and before the impromptu live stream about the product shortage, it was $32 on eBay, and I was like, I'm sure I'll be able to get one of these later. Now it's just impossible. So I'll have to wait a little bit on completing my set of vigilances. Luckily, I was able to trade for a hyperfoil back, a couple weeks back, so that at least there's a little bit of bling if I want to end up playing vigilance, which I probably will, because as I mentioned, this hard control environment, as however you feel about it, is probably a pretty good spot for Grand Admiral Thrawn, which I'm not disappointed about because I love playing Thrawn. So I may have to reinvent that Thrawn blue deck that we showed on the channel, and maybe take out some units and add in some vigilances and a little bit more control and see where that gets us. But it does beg the question, if we're going to start seeing more and more of these decks that are so focused on the top end, and getting to the end game and without, you know, sustaining lethal in the process, is that going to just encourage more people to try to, take out this Vader blue before it hits 7 resources by playing something like a Sabine? Like, or is Sabine gonna retake the lead for being the public enemy number 1 here? Like, what do we think we're gonna see because of this?
Well, I mean, I think we are already seeing it because I think the results from Orlando also show us that this is Sabine's moment too. Like
Mhm.
she was the only 8-0 deck. She had very good representation in the top cut as well. The guy who went 8-0, didn't he lose in the mirror? I think that's the only reason he lost because he played a mirror match,
Mhm.
um, which is, you know, hero aggro mirror is like basically random. I mean, there's some skill for sure, but
Sure.
it's like you got to be lucky. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I think Sabine is definitely going to shine if these control decks continue to gain popularity. Sabine, Leia, like some of these really heavy hitting aggro decks, I think have a place, which is good because then you've got your traditional triangle between Boba, Sabine, and hard control. It's all there, and you can kind of have your pick.
So you mentioned Boba. Is Boba right now like your only option at mid range? Because I'm struggling to think of a mid range deck that can compete with the Holy Trinity that you just mentioned, right? The Sabines, the Iden slash Krennic slash Vader slash Palp, and then the Boba. Like, if you are a mid range player, are you sort of forced into Boba, and by the transitive property then forced into one of the most expensive decks in the format?
I don't. I know. I never think you're forced into anything,
Okay,
so I'll
fair,
start with that.
fair.
As someone who's played a lot of Luke Green lately, I like that deck a lot.
Mm-hmm,
Um, I think it has a very difficult matchup into Boba because Boba just does what it's trying to do better.
mm-hmm,
But I like that deck a lot in the mid range. I also think the green yellow hero shell. What I think Han Green is probably the most like successful form of that.
mm-hmm.
Um, but as someone who's played a lot of Leia, I really like I really like what that deck can do as well. So I think there are options, and I don't think you have to break your bank to make those options and make them good. But Boba is definitely the best.
I think our next gameplay series on the channel will feature some decks that don't have any legendaries in them, and we can run some popular combinations and see what we get. Because I think I agree, right? Like you can find substitutes for Vader and substitutes for Boba. Now finding a substitute for unit Boba is tough because you're not going to find a whole lot of 3/5s out there that can deal 6 damage. Um, and confirmed one of the best legendaries in the game, Luke. Uh, but yeah, I do think that you have options at your disposal. Like you can find things that give you what Vader gives you, without obviously some of the extra stuff like the search. You can find things that give you a five power ambush, right? You can find things at 3 cost that can reliably deal with other units. I just think that if you're going into the competitive environment, which, like it or not, we're going to see a little bit more of soon, because I understand store showdowns are part of the casual tier of C3OP. I get it. But people want to compete for these Mace Windu promos. People want themselves to be considered, with the Orlando 5K winner as the person who brought the right deck and played it the best and won the tournament. So we're going to start seeing a little bit more of a competitive mindset as we get into May, and start seeing some of these short showdowns. And I just wonder, like, where, like, you almost have to pick the right spot of the circle between the Sabines, the Bobas, and the hard controls, and judge your local meta accordingly. Because you could bring Sabine and think you're going to get, a huge meta of control, and then run into a bunch more Sabines. And now you're playing mirror matches all day. And like you said, that's a coin flip. So
Yep.
it's going to be very interesting to see what regions and how the meta shifts, sort of store showdown by store showdown, as people start getting more results.
Yep. Absolutely. And local scenes, they're all different. So you just never know what's going to come out of these. I'm excited to see, because I think in some of these communities, some folks don't have as much stuff. Product's been a little bit short. Some folks are going to have to get creative, and I'm looking forward to seeing what that yields, because I think we've been talking about the same 3 or 4 decks for quite a while now, in terms of what's competitive anyway. So I'll be interested to see how else we can spice that up.
Well, you know what's really going to spice up the meta is a new set.
Set two.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Shadows of the Galaxy, let's talk a little bit about Shadows of the Galaxy here, because we have been introduced to 3 new mechanics that are going to be coming with Shadows of the Galaxy. And I have to say I'm sort of 2 minds on a couple of these. So I want to get your thoughts, because we haven't really talked about this to this point. I'm curious to see where you land. So let's start with bounties, right? We all know that bounties were not really, they didn't really take off in Star Wars Destiny, but we have sort of a very close mirror to what one of the downgrades in Destiny was here, and that's wanted. So the first kind of bounty that we saw was a bounty that goes on an upgrade, and you put that on your opponent's unit. And wanted is a 0 cost upgrade that doesn't give you any stat buffs, so it's +0 power, +0 HP. But it is a bounty condition, and attached unit gains the bounty ability, which is to ready 2 friendly resources. Now, the reminder text is: when this unit is defeated or captured, its opponent collects its bounty. So you defeat the unit that wanted is on, or you capture it, which capture is another mechanic we'll talk about in a second. But essentially, if a unit's exhausted, you can play a card that allows you, or use an ability that allows you to capture it. That exhausted unit goes under one of your units, and your unit is considered to be guarding that unit. All upgrades disappear. All damage disappears. And then when the guarding unit is defeated or leaves play, you get your unit back basically, but it comes in exhausted and with no upgrades and no damage, etc., etc. So we'll get to capture in a second, but first, bounty. Like, are you fully incentivized to try to ready two friendly resources by playing this card?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of sold on this one.
Okay.
I think that, being able to basically have Boba's ability, you know, on a stick present in other capacities besides just running Boba himself, is quite interesting. We That's one of the reasons the Boba deck is so powerful, is because of some of the huge turns it can pull off by readying resources. So now you give me the option to do that outside of playing him as a leader. I'm interested. And there's some juicy targets you could throw this on and knock out quite easily, to gain that benefit. So I think I'm a fan. I'm definitely interested to see what this can do in yellow, and I think it's great that the game has it.
I think it's great the game has it also. I just don't think I like this one. Um, because I'm sitting here trying to think of what I would take out of some of my decks to put this in, right? And yes, the ability to ready two friendly resources is great, and I have no issue with that. But I think I'd rather just like play another card that furthers my win condition instead of playing this, like playing another unit or playing another control card, or playing another waylay or a surprise strike, or something like that. Like I just wonder if this is strong enough to warrant the slot that it takes up, and I don't have that answer yet until we see the full set. I don't mind the bounty mechanic. I think that we're probably going to see other bounties that do cooler things, and maybe I'll hold out for those at that point.
It's
Uh,
fair. And
but
we'll probably also see some leader that interacts with bounties too in some
mhm.
way, which will add some sort of strength to this card.
Sure, sure. And we've already seen the Mandalorian, who we'll talk about in a bit, that interacts very well with upgrades. And that this is
Yep.
obviously something that services that very well. There are also bounties that just come naturally on unit cards. So over here we have the Cartel Turncoat, which has a bounty, which when it's defeated or captured, your opponent draws a card. But the flip side of that is this is a hugely overstated space unit compared to what we're used to seeing. It's a one cost, 2/3. So that is sort of the balancing point of the bounty. I mean, this I'm much more willing to play than the other one, even though my opponent gets a card for it, because imagine putting this and a Greedo out on round one, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Presenting 5 damage going into the next round. I mean, this is I will happily let my opponent have a card
Mm-hmm.
if it means I can play this.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, this is kind of an insane one drop. Can't wait to get this in my yellow hero decks.
Yeah, if I'm willing to play Force Choke and give my opponent a card that way, then I'm definitely willing to play this. Just maybe not in the same deck. Because then if I'm giving my opponent too many cards, then I'm going to be in trouble.
Now, where's the underworld support? That's what I'm waiting for.
Oh, I'm sure you'll get it. I'm sure this is the set for it. How much they lean into the underworld tribal remains to be seen, but I'm very confident that this is going to be the set where you find it. So let's talk a little bit about capture as we show off the Mandalorian's rifle here. This is a 3-cost heroism upgrade, and it's specifically designed for the Mandalorian leader. But you can still play it as just an upgrade. It gives you +3 power, +0 HP. It is an item weapon, and you can attach it to a friendly non-vehicle unit. But when played, if attached unit is the Mandalorian, he captures an exhausted enemy non-leader unit. So this is the card you play to capture that exhausted unit that you already exhausted with the Mandalorian's leader ability, or exhausted in some other way, like with Grogu. Oh my goodness, Grogu. Don't even get me started on Grogu. That card is crazy. Um, But yeah, this has obvious synergy with the Mandalorian. Bringing in the bounty. Where are you on capturing versus just straight up defeating? Like, do you think that capturing is going to be useful, or is it just like just another campy thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big question. If as of right now, I would just rather take the unit off the board entirely. Um, I think there could potentially be room for capturing to mean something, and I can see it. I can see it being good in the right situations, but I think it's almost always better to just take the unit off the board altogether.
Mm,
So I'll have to see how that plays out. And this rifle specifically, I think it's hard that it doesn't give any defense because if you are capturing a unit, you want that unit to stay alive.
mm-hmm.
You want the unit that's captured it to stay alive, and getting no buff from this on the defensive side is tough for me. But obviously, synergies with the Mandalorian leader and unit card,
Mm-hmm.
and so that'll be interesting. But I don't know if it would be different. I think if you capture the unit and then it just went away once the capturer died. But the fact that your opponent gets them back, it's like it'll be interesting. People run traitorous and change of heart and things like that. It
Mm-hmm.
feels kind of similar, except maybe for a longer duration or shorter duration, depending on how long your unit lives.
Yeah.
So it could be a thing, but I think I'm still leaning towards defeating over capturing as of now.
So I was all the way out on capturing. When this was first revealed, I was like, this is silly. Why would I ever do this? And then I got to thinking about the Fett's fire sprays and the Luke Skywalker units and some of the Avengers and some of these big bads that you can't just readily deal with one card all the time. And especially if you're outgunned in a particular arena, like if you have 3 units in the ground arena and nothing in space, and they drop a Fett's fire spray ready, you're if you don't have a vanquish right now, or an overwhelming barrage on a 4 power unit, you're kind of in a bad spot. And so the idea of capturing, especially if we get into this sort of control world where you're doing your best to limit your opponent to like one thing on the board at a time so that you can readily deal with it. It's going to be hard to for your opponent to get that back if they can't keep units on the board, right? So capturing could be a way of dealing with those bigger units that you just don't have an answer for, or units hidden behind a sentinel that you don't have access to right away. That provide you with a momentary respite, and also like provide you with a target on a unit of your choice. If you want to put this on something that has really high power, and especially if you're using the Mandalorian's rifle to capture something, now in order to get that back, your opponent's got to send their units into something that's got their power +3. So the same way that like a regional governor or an admiral piet is a de facto sentinel, you're providing that with the guarding unit, and that could prove useful. I mean, there are probably going to be people smarter than me who are able to figure that out. So I agree with you that defeating is still definitely the way to go, especially if you're trying to get the bounty from it. But if I can't eliminate a Fett's fire spray or a Luke Skywalker or an Obi-Wan Kenobi, uh, I'd much rather capture it than just let it sit there.
Oh yeah, I mean, yes. But it's just yeah, if it's not doing anything else for you aside from just acting as quasi removal until your guarding unit dies,
Mm-hmm.
then it's hard for me to see a ton of value. If it's combined with something like this where you also get an upgrade that gives you extra power, like fine.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think I don't know. This says it captures an exhausted enemy non-leader unit. Like I'd rather just play Vanquish and defeat the unit altogether.
Well,
That's just where I'm at right now, but we'll see how it plays out with the rest of the set.
you're not going to catch me not extolling the virtues of Vanquish. I love that card, mostly because it gets rid of Fet's Fire Spray. So there's that. Can you tell there's been some Fet's Fire Spray trauma in my life? It just
Yeah, this is a new development.
the card is just so good. So you can also not defeat units in order to get them back that are captured, which I think also, speaks to maybe the lack of efficiency of capturing, at least with this early wave of cards that we've seen. Because then you get cards like Unexpected Escape. That's difficult to say. It's a 1-cost vigilance event. It is a trick, so Boba Fett, not Boba Fett, Jabba the Hutt can search this out. And it allows you to exhaust a unit, and you may rescue a captured card guarded by that unit. So now you don't even have to defeat the guarding unit. You could just play Unexpected Escape for 1 or 0 if you're playing Jabba the Hutt, and just get your unit back.
Yeah. Or you can just not even use it for the rescue your unit and just exhaust a unit for 1,
Mm-hmm.
which is very interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
For that reason, I like this card a lot. It's like better than, um, or more economically efficient than some of the other ways to exhaust units in the game.
Well, you just talked about Wanted giving you Boba Fett's ability. Unexpected Escape gives you Thrawn's ability. For 1 cost, you can exhaust a unit.
Ability. Yep.
So, and we've all seen how relevant Thrawn has been in the current Spark of Rebellion meta with
Yeah, but this is in blue. This is a blue, um, neutral, for lack of a better word.
mm-hmm.
Single aspect card here. So heroes, villains, anybody can use this in blue.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
yeah,
With the upside of rescuing somebody.
yeah.
I like it. This one I like. I'm into this card.
I certainly like the artwork on this a lot. I mean, it's really sick art, with the cross guard saber there. So, uh, so we've talked about bounties. We've talked about capturing. The newest mechanic that was revealed this past week was smuggle. Now, smuggle is a really interesting one to me, and probably my favorite of the new mechanics.
Super awesome. Yeah, this is great.
Because smuggle allows you to play a card from your resource row, paying an additional cost for it, again, because you're playing the card from your resources. And then that card is then replaced by the top card of your deck in your resource row. So an example of this is Timely Intervention, which is an astounding card, and I'm so excited for it. This is a 1-cost command event. It's a tactic. It's a common. And Timely Intervention allows you to play a unit from your hand, giving it ambush for this phase. You can also smuggle this card for 2 costs instead of 1. And it's also denoted as a command card for that reason. So you play it from your resources for 2 instead of 1. This card's bonkers. I think this is going to be very, very popular in pretty much any command deck, because we've already seen that ambush is worth an extra resource, right? When you're building out a unit, it feels like if you have 2 4/5s or 2 3/5s or 2 4/6s, but one of them has ambush, that one's going to cost more generally. So paying an extra resource to give something ambush feels on curve, but then in the late game, you can pay 2 and give any unit ambush. And the really exciting thing about this is, like, this isn't like Energy Conversion Lab where you have to do it to a 6 cost or less unit. You can do it to anything. You want to give the Devastator ambush and you have 12 resources, go ahead. You can do it. Like, that is crazy to me.
Yeah, that's what I really like about this card, is that there's no limit to what unit you can use it on. And then obviously the smuggle too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is great. And the fact that you can now bring cards out of your resource row to have an impact on the game is chef's kiss. Super, super awesome mechanic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we knew there was a resource mechanic coming. I don't know how many of us knew it would be this, but this is really sweet. And there's a lot of shenanigans that get opened up as a result of this, because not only can you play cards for extra in the same aspect, but you can do it in different aspects, like with the Hot Shot DL44 blaster. So this is
Yeah.
a aggression one cost upgrade. It's an item weapon. It gives you +2 power, +0 HP. You have to attach it to a non-vehicle unit, and that's it. If you play it from your hand, it's a one cost aggression card. You get +2 power. That's it. But if you play it from your resource row by using Smuggle, you can play it for 3, but the aspect attached to it is actually cunning, not aggression. And if you play it using Smuggle, you can then attack with attached unit. I mean, what a awesome design that we're getting from Hotshot DL44. This is great. Like this opens up so much versatility in deck building. I love this card.
Yeah, yeah, it's really cool because now it's you have incentive to play the card with a certain aspect, certain archetype,
Mm-hmm.
and you get an extra benefit by choosing the smuggle. It's already like something that you could probably feel pretty good about doing just playing normally, but then you have the smuggle benefit. Um, and these are all of these cards with the smuggle. If you do resource them, it's like having additional cards in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just there's more options available, and I'm all for that. So yeah, I think this is fantastic, and this is a really really cool design.
Yeah, and this is gonna be a popular rare when set 2 drops, because I think, again, it's basically, you're basically getting the fleet lieutenant ability without getting a 3/3 body on the board. Obviously that comes with its own advantages, but the trade-off is, again, you can play this as an extra card in your hand essentially. So I
Yep.
really like that about it. Um, so those are the new mechanics. They're all pretty interesting. I do think there's going to open up a lot of deck building choices, which I'm pretty excited about. I wanted to talk about one more new card that was revealed recently, because I just think it's really cool, and it's no surprise that it's a villainy card. So we're going to talk about it, and that's Crosshair. So Crosshair is a 4 cost command villainy unit. It's a ground unit. That's unique. It is an Imperial clone trooper. It's a 2/6, and I believe this is the first card that we've seen that has 2 actions in the ability text of the card. So as an action, you can pay 2 resources, and this unit gets +1/+0 for this phase. Now, it's worth noting that is not, there's no limit to that. So if you have 8 resources and you have nothing to do with them, you can take 4 consecutive actions to give this unit +4, which is wild. And then as an action, you can also exhaust Crosshair to deal damage equal to his power to an enemy ground unit, which is perfect for a sniper. Corwin, this is such a cool card.
Yeah, I love this card. Crosshair is awesome, and chunky too with the 6 HP. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's gonna have some staying power too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, feels good. I don't think you're gonna be, especially when there are so few as of now, like good 4 cost units, especially in green. Like green
Mm-hmm.
specifically is hurting for this and has needed this in the worst way. So um Crosshair delivers, man. This is a great option for villain green. I am as a predominantly hero player, I am very jealous.
Well, I'm sure the heroes will get some sweet stuff too. So I'm not particularly worried about that. But yeah, it does feel like, to me, like it does feel like they probably tried this in testing with the action to pump his power costing 1 instead of 2, and we're just like, no, no way,
Yeah.
that's way too strong.
Oh, so good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be
It's got to be 2.
that would be nuts. But yeah, I mean, we've seen some interesting stuff from Shadows of the Galaxy. As as someone who is playing a starter leader, and then I also am playing a starter leader. I want to get your thoughts really quickly on the leaders that we're seeing in the set two starter set, the Mandalorian and Moff Gideon. Where do you think, like, which of these is going to be the Vader of set two when it comes to, the one that's played a lot more frequently, not in both pre-releases and also like in the meta in different variations.
I gotta say Moff Gideon, man. Um, I just think I think that he just looks a lot more interesting, you know? Like we've seen we've already seen what a yellow hero 6 drop or 7 looks like, and it doesn't look very good. Um Now maybe something like Grogu and some other support kind of helps with that.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the Mandalorian, like being able to exhaust something that um is it 6 or less remaining HP on his unit side?
Unit side is 6 or less remaining. Leader side is 4 or less remaining.
I mean, that's strong, right? There's not a
Mm-hmm.
lot of cards in the game that can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to play an upgrade to do it. So it's very conditional. Gideon's ability is far easier to meet. Um, and the overwhelm, as we've seen, has been a very powerful mechanic in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and plus he deploys a turn sooner. So I personally think Moff Gideon has more of a chance to be meta relevant than the Mandalorian does, but I do find both of their designs to be very interesting and cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased, so it's hard for me to answer anything but Moff Gideon because I'm a villainy player, and that's just what I do. I'm already thinking of, how many 3 drops I can toss in to a Gideon deck. I think being able to trade up with a super laser technician is incredible.
Yep.
Because now my super laser techs are going to be able to potentially have 3 power when they're attacking a unit. So that's pretty cool. But I will say this in the defense of the Mandalorian, and that's that yes, his ability works only when you play upgrades, but that also means that every upgrade in your deck has the potential to be a free exhaust, which
Hmm.
doesn't exist right now, um, other than Thrawn's leader side or leader unit side rather.
Yep.
So if you're thinking of it in a way where you're you're just exhausting the field, there's a world in which maybe that is what's keeping you between the Mandalorian doing that with his ability and Grogu just using an action to exhaust a unit again for free. Uh, maybe there's a world in which that does enough to get some of these capture mechanics off and keep those cards on the board and things like that. But I don't think we're gonna have that full context until we see more of the set and how far they really leaned into things like capture and bounty in Shadows of the Galaxy. Because what I equate it to Destiny because that's what we know, and that's where we started in terms of gaming and like competitive gaming and content creation. It's already been proven that FFG has completely turned the corner away from Star Wars Destiny. So I'm not comparing the two games, but I do know that in whatever set it was, it's been so long that I've forgotten when Star Wars Destiny introduced pod racing. Um, that showed up as sort of a cute little thing for one set, and then it was gone. I don't think it's going to be the case this time, but if it shows up in just a sort of limited introductory fashion in Shadows of the Galaxy, it'll be interesting to see how it takes off, if at all, and if people are deterred from that moving forward, even if there is more capture and more bounty support in future sets.
Yep. I totally agree. And It's obviously hard to evaluate these cards just with the limited knowledge we have about the set,
Hmm.
but I do think that on the surface, and even with some of the stuff that we've seen, like like the Phase Trooper for Gideon, like there are some very very strong interactions there, and and you've already pointed out, Super Laser. There's some other really good things you can do with three power or less units. So it's it's Gideon for me for now, and we'll see how that evolves as we get more spoilers.
Well, I'm just still waiting for whenever we get a Maul reveal, whether that's a leader or a unit.
Oh yeah, small.
I know he's coming because he's in the artwork. So let's make it happen. But we're gonna go ahead and wrap things up the way we have been doing previously by cracking a pack. So I'm gonna reach into my stash here from Deployer Leader Gaming. There are 12 now, 11 packs left in this box that I bought from Deployer Leader, which right now these packs feel like gold. So I'm very grateful that I have had some sort of willpower to keep some of these unopened, even though I opened the Vader from this box off camera, which was unfortunate. But be
Yeah,
sure
way
to
to go.
yeah, that's it's what can I say? I needed to open a pack one day, and it just so happened to have Vader in it. What am I gonna do? But be sure to check out Deployer Leader Gaming at deployerleader.com. There's going to be a link in the description box below. You can find articles from us and DYL's other partners. He's got some accessories still left and some singles still left. And, Brian, who runs DYL, is going to jump back into content creation, which is really exciting. So, again, link in the description box below. If you do buy singles, there will be a code down in the description box as well. You can use code ROLLON10 at checkout for 10% off your singles order. So go check that out. We're going to rip open this pack before we hit the hour mark because, well, that's just what we want to do. So let's see what's in here. Of note, this is a Thrawn pack, which we love to see. So that's great. I'm going to do a showcase check. Not a showcase, but we do have a hyperspace. It looks like a hyperspace Tarkin, and we were right about that. So let's check that out. Okay, so not only a hyperspace Tarkin, but a hyperspace Echo base. So there you go. Very exciting. All right, let's see what else we have here. We've got a cargo juggernaut, or when you love those, right? Keep fighting. Escort skiff. We talked about the 4 cost spot in command. This is really one of the only usable ones. Vigilant honor guards. Jeddah agitator. I really want to find a use for this. I really do think that paying 2 for essentially a 4/1 when there's a leader out has some spice to it, but I just haven't been able to figure it out yet. That and I'm still stuck on all the villainy stuff. Alliance dispatcher, snapshot reflexes, Lothal insurgent, confiscate, distant patroller, Bosk, hardpoint heavy blaster. I believe we're coming to the rare-ish slot. There's an Emperor Palpatine. We love to see a good Palpatine around here.
Mm,
And we've
nice.
got a foil Imperial Interceptor. Very nice. Very nice. So that's our pack, which means that's our episode. Thanks, everybody, so much for tuning in again. We are thrilled to continue to do this, and we're going to keep doing it because, it's a lot of fun. We may not be as consistent as some other creators because of scheduling, but rest assured, we're going to get Corwin's camera issues figured out. We're going to keep talking about the game and look forward to some more gameplay coming up here on the channel soon because we really enjoyed that, and we'll get some better audio through those as well. Corwin, early thoughts what you're going to be building for our next gameplay series?
Well, it sounds like we gotta make some budget versions of decks, maybe. Get a little. I mean, it's gonna be heroes,
Yeah,
so I'll put something together. But no, we'll definitely we've got some good reception on the gameplay, and it was a lot of fun recording it. So we'll get more of that out to you guys very soon.
awesome. Well, look forward to that. Thanks everybody for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. That helps us out a ton. Go ahead and like the video and comment down below what you're excited about for Shadows of the Galaxy or what you're looking to play in your store showdown because they're coming up and we're really excited to cover those as well. So that's going to do it for us today. For my brother Corwin, I'm Kevin, signing off.